everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm joined by Mark, and for those that can see that are watching, it's Mark in a white shirt, and I am also Mark in a white shirt. But don't get confused; he's the good-looking one.
Not really.
But I've known Mark for a long time. Maybe we've known each other somewhere between 15 and 20 years. We've worked together before. We put Mark into an assignment. He's also worked with us client side as well. And today we're going to be talking about a subject that Mark knows a lot about, which is about turnaround. And it's something that we've done a lot of, Mark's done a lot of. But before we go into that, Mark, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Mark Baker. I've worked in turnaround since 1993. Before I did that, I worked at BAE and gained some qualifications there, which set me on the road. Then I went off to AXO Nobel and eventually set up a division for bus and truck coatings. And then decided I was a bit over ambitious in those days, and decided that I was worth more. So I went off and did my first freelance assignment. I didn't know it was a turnaround assignment at the time. I thought I was going in there to help the owner of the business, basically prepare it for a sale. And when I got there, I found a fraud within the first week. I found that the previous general manager, who departed quickly, had actually purchased £80,000 worth of product, which was several years worth. So I had to deal with that. And then I found myself really taking on a turnaround without any previous knowledge of that sector, and we did turn it around, and the company was sold to a Dutch group, and I went off on my merry way starting to do turnarounds. So I've done that ever since, and I've done a lot of turnarounds, restructuring, and scale ups, starting with sales teams going into the operational area, and finance. Find it very rewarding. Love saving jobs, and also love providing stakeholders with a positive future, because it's a very, very difficult situation when a business is in stress.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've done so many turnarounds. Probably the turnarounds are probably linked to where the macroeconomic situation is. So we've probably done less turnarounds in the last sort of few years, but they've started to increase over the last year. And I think that just mirrors where the economy is. I mean, I remember I'm going to say like the good old days, like I'm really old, but I remember the good old days where, a bank or, a lead bank would give us a call and say, we've got too much invested into this particular business, too much exposure. We want the best route to value, which was the code word for get me my money out. And then we put in a bank-appointed turnaround team to come in and do what the bank needed. And you can't do that anymore. The banks don't do that. They don't push the button on turnaround like that. I think it's bad for PR, and it's just not the route they go down. So now we get phone calls from investors, active investors. We also get phone calls from organizations that are family owned. It could be first, second, third generation. And that's where we put you into the turnaround that you did for us, isn't it? That was a family backed business where it had lost its founder through I think the founder had died, hadn't he?
Motor neuron disease, terrible situation, yeah.
Terrible, yeah. And then the family was left with this business, and everyone had got their fingers in this business, and nothing really was coming out of it for the benefit of the former owner's wife, who was the sole beneficiary of the business. And again, that shows you the complexity that some of these turnarounds can be in. To having to go in and sort of look at a turnaround situation. How do you first look at it? What's on your tick list of 3 or 4 things that you keep your eye out for? What are those?
Yeah, well, the first thing there that I wanted to do was get a brief from the owners, and the brief from the owners transpired into me doing a deep dive into the business, in sales, which was the core reason why they had some issue. They were being left behind by a changing market. There was also quite an issue with culture, and that was very close to the owners. In fact, we had to depart company with one of the family members because it wasn't helping the business at all. But the other things that I do is go right the way through the business, get the brief, and then test that brief right the way down to the guys on the shop floor who are critical to the success of the business, and then look at the finances, look at the stresses there, basically that's what I do.
Yeah, and in terms of a successful turnaround, and this is the title of the podcast, the 3 pillars of a successful turnaround. What's your methodology? What are the 3 pillars, and could you talk us a bit through that?
Yeah, so the 3 pillars for me are that I followed are sales, organisation, operation, and finance, and it is about following that roadmap and making sure that the first thing, like any business, if you haven't got sales, then it doesn't matter what happens next. You need sales, and obviously, if the organisation can't support those sales, or can drive cost out and efficiencies in, that's critically important. And then, of course, finance and follow the data, because most of the businesses that I go into believe that they've got a margin, a healthy margin, and then when you actually drill down, follow the data, the margins are not the margins, and then it's a case of, for example, like the business we were talking about, they had 16,000 SKUs, and I would say 3/4 of those were out of date or out of step with the requirement and demand in the market. So that was a massive change on product. But so sales teams need to listen very carefully to the sales team, work with the sales team, and find out what they're not getting right in the business, or what the business is not getting right for them, and where their clients are not being supported. And then I go through the operation from the sales support through to all the back office team, and I do this using the obvious, which is a SWOT analysis. And so I use a SWOT analysis as the guiding light for everybody. A lot of people don't know what a SWOT analysis when you get down to the very operational team on the shop floor. So I give them some, I always do a workshop for them so they understand, and I turn that into an internal and external SWOT analysis so we can understand what's going right or indifferently in the business, and also externally what we're getting right and what we're not. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and in some business I put issues on the back of that, because sometimes there are issues that we shouldn't be brushing under the carpet. They need bringing out up top. I'm going to give you an example of a situation where a manufacturing business, looked all very, very good on the surface, but culturally it was very challenging. And when I did the SWOT analysis and did that with the team on the shop floor, the one issue was we're making things and we've got bench joiners and we can't see what we're doing. Because the lighting's so poor. We've been on about this for 3 years, and so I was fortunate. I went out and got a grant, and we put LED lighting in, and we did that on a lease, and they were happy. Yes, people do listen to us, and it's amazing that those small things, make such a difference.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think of all the chief restructuring officers, turnaround individuals, operational turnaround individuals, they all tell me the same thing, and this is over the last 25 years, and that's listen to the people on the shop floor because they know.
They definitely do.
I know of this is a little story that I won't mention the company and I won't mention the CRO, but they went to a huge organization where they had to turn it around. It was producing meat. It's got livestock. And the turnaround officer went into the warehouse, spoke to the forklift truck driver, and the forklift truck driver said, "Oh, you're the guy that's going to come and fire us all, aren't you?" And he said, "No, not necessarily. But if I was going to fire some people, how many do you think is going to go?" And he said, "One third." It's okay. How do you get to one third? He says, "Well, Gaffer, I'm really busy, really busy. My mate John, who's been with the business a long time, he's really busy as well. But the new kid that came in 18 months ago is bone idle, does nothing." And he said, "We don't really need him." He said, "So, ultimately on that basis, I think it's going to be that we'll lose one third." They lost one third. After the CRO went through all the data and everything else, they lost one third. The forklift driver knew.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how much the shop floor knows.
Yeah. Yeah. I am going to mention a client's name because I don't think it's going to cause an issue. I did some work for Co-op Retail Group. I did some work up in Manchester. They'd implemented a new shared service program, and the poor people up in Glasgow that were doing the payroll were finding that the systems weren't working. They were paying people that had left for 2 or 3 months after they'd left when they shouldn't be, and new starters weren't getting their payroll on time. So finished it, and we finished that and put things right. They then asked me to go down and look at a dairy down in Devon. And it was named Definitely Devon, and they employed 150 staff, and they asked me to shut it down. In other words, it was a poison chalice. There was a joint venture with the local farmers, and the co-op had sold off all of their dairies to dairy farmers of Great Britain. And they said, "Can you shut this down?" And when I got down there, I found out why they wanted it closed down, because it was the easiest route to getting some paint off the desk. And what actually happened, having reviewed the business and talked to the farmers and talked to the team, similarly to what you were just saying, found out that the business had legs. And so I went through that from the sales point. We won some more business because it needed more business, but from local supermarkets of the big names. And looked at the fleet, looked at the operations team, production team, worked with the farmers, and sorted out the fleet, which was being managed by a third party that somebody's cousin owned the third party fleet companies and who worked for the company. So you can imagine. Anyway, we drove all of those costs out, efficiencies in, and sold the business to Muller. And so saved 150 jobs. And if I reflect on everything that I've done, that was probably the most rewarding assignment that I've taken on, because that particular area in Devon, if you weren't a farmer or worked in the local pub or restaurant, then you were out of work. And 150 people in a very small town needed to keep their jobs, which they did.
That's nice. And I think when I speak to CROs, that they always, when they tell me stories, they always tell me stories of how many jobs they saved. There might be an element of cutting along the way, but ultimately they're saving jobs. And the one thing that you said then, you've said it a couple of times within some of the examples that you've given, and that is sales. Sales and operations, but first sales, that starts to make a difference. You can turn around a business if there's sales coming in. You definitely cannot turn around a business from cost cutting alone.
No, you can't. Absolutely not. And I've been in business where they've said, we've got an efficient production, distribution. We don't have enough sales. Well, okay, let's look at why we haven't got enough sales. the assignment that you mentioned earlier that you put me into, their issue was that their product had all gone out of fashion, and
Yeah.
they were dealing with independent hardware suppliers. You don't see many of those now, do you?
No.
And so opened the door to Wix and Screwfix. In fact, introduced a new range, identified that the background of the business was in storage, by the way, and introduced light racking. Introduced 24, 25 different product ranges built on the basis that they all had different weight loadings, so you could put them into different environments. Had the samples weight load tested by an insurance company that tests warehouse pallet racking. And one of the shelves took a weight loading equivalent to a Mini, which is pretty special. Had those made in Poland, first batch, and then went to the Far East. Unfortunately, I wish we could have gone to the UK, but we couldn't. And I did 1.2 million in the first year with Screwfix, launching
Crazy.
that product range, and then 750 with Wix. And sales, in those situations don't take 5 minutes, because you've got to bring the product on, all the development that goes with it. But we found other products in the range that we could buy in or improve, and I spent quite a lot of time in Europe finding better suppliers until we could have our own brand. I'll give you an example. Do you know what spur shelving is? It's
No.
you find it in doctors' surgeries, and it's white metal with anyway, I'm going off track. It's white metal racking, and we were making 30% margin. Went to the Far East, and it was 97% margin.
Oh
And
my goodness.
and that's having sold it to our biggest clients. And so these were the issues with the business. The margins, as I said at the beginning, margins, they thought they were healthy, and they were not.
Yeah, but you start pushing the sales, and you start pushing the sales into, this is sustainable sales. This is sales with healthy margin. Whichever way you do it, whether it's your sell price or whether it's your cost of purchase, or whatever it is, but they've got to be healthy margin. You start pushing that through into the business, the turnaround will start to take care of itself a little bit.
It will, and then it's bringing disciplines into the sales team. I was brought up at Axo Nobel on platform selling. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
So platform selling disciplines, which focus on on pipelines and winning business, and I found that over the years, a lot of companies just don't have a very good set of disciplines. Yeah, we got a CRM, okay, but the CRM is not being used for the right with the right goals, outcomes, and to manage the activities. So putting in platform selling, and did that over many years, and found that it focuses the team. The other thing is that when new guys come on board, there's a lot of companies that just treat them as if they're the same as the other guys that have been there, or ladies that have been there a long time. And what you find is that that they're just thrown into the deep end. They're not given a mentoring,
Mm.
a mentoring journey, an induction mentoring. Put them with other people that are successful, because we all breeds success. And I found that by the way, I think I'm probably gabbling on a bit there, Mark.
Yeah, okay, I can clip that. Where would you like to go from?
What I'd like. So I introduced platform selling into a lot of businesses, and platform selling focuses the sales team on different sets of activities in order to achieve the end goal, which is new business, either new business, or increased business from existing clients. And along the way, I find that when I go into a business and speak to the sales team, you'll find that the new guys are treated in a way that they are thrown into the deep end and not exactly mentored along with the successful team that they've already got. So make changes there, because you can't expect somebody to learn to swim and then swim the channel the week after. It's not very
true,
fair.
mate.
And the other main area, of course, is we've talked about operations, we've talked about sales, is finance. And on finance, you generally find that I've not come across many very proactive finance directors and finance managers. They tend to, in smaller companies, they tend to be, they do what they do, and they're not given the opportunity to say, look, I know how to fix my end, and although the data's there, it's not being followed in some cases. And also I find finance directors that have got some great solutions for the business, but they've not been allowed or enabled to come up with a solution that they can implement. I mean, for example, invoice financing, asset financing, stock financing. I've implemented all of those as a medium-term cash flow solution, because those businesses were cash flow lean.
Yeah, well, do you know, we in recent, probably recent years, just certainly many months, we've been working with financial restructuring type consultancies. So I remember, 15 years ago, you'd only ever go to like the Big Four. And I think, nowadays, the specialist financial restructuring people are doing pretty well at taking some of the market share from the Big Four. The challenge they have is that they only work on the financial restructuring part of it. And they know full well that you cannot just do the financial restructuring. You need the operational side to come with it. And of course, the sales is part of that. So what we've started doing is we've started white labeling, if that's the right word, some of our interim managers into the financial restructuring consultancies. And then what allows them to do is it allows them to give a much better overall, more holistic type service to their customers. At the same time, it stops another consultancy who might have operation and sales expertise, but also has financial expertise coming in, starting with operations, then taking over financials. So they do it as a bit of protection, but mainly it's to ensure the successful of the turnaround. Now, that's how the market's changed a lot in the last sort of 10 years or so. Have you seen the market change from your side as an interim sort of restructuring turnaround operational salesperson?
Yeah, I have seen it changed, and I used to do a lot of work with PEs and tier one lenders, and now it's none of that that's happening. I'm being approached by, as you said earlier, business owners, either first, second, or third generation, and that's where my work's coming from. I'm finding that landscape is, they're worried about their futures, they're worried about what's going on economically, and but I agree with you.
Yeah, we're also getting recommendations or introductions from lawyers, from sort of UK solicitors, where the owner of the business or certainly a shareholder in the business is worried that if the business goes under, how it leaves them personally. And I think that's a fair question to ask. It's a stressful time. And then the lawyers are contacted us and saying, oh, by the way, could I introduce you to this client? They feel that the business could be turned around, but lack the skills to do it. And so we're seeing the lawyers getting the first indicator that the business is in trouble. And it was never like that sort of 10, 15 years ago. And again, that's another way that it's changed.
Yeah, I go along with that, Mark. But I find most of my work comes directly from the business owner who, yes, funny enough saying that the accountant, an accountant introduced me to the last assignment that I did, and they'd work with the client. Also, their landlord was concerned, and their landlord actually approached the accountant, who approached me. I knew the accountant, but I didn't know the landlord, and the landlord was just very concerned that this business was stressed. His tenant, and he said, do you think you can help them? Because I know that the introduction says you can. The introducer said you can. So that's
Nice.
what I did. Restructured that one. Actually, restructured that one last October, and and sorted that out. That was a manufacturing business.
But the work's coming from different places now, and I think from a macroeconomic perspective, I think we're probably entering into a period of more turnaround is needed. We're definitely starting to see a little bit of it coming through, and I'm looking at indicators and a bit of a gut feel, because I've seen this a couple of times before, because I've been doing this 25 years now. So
Yep.
I think the market's coming to us, which is great. Thank you for taking us through the three pillars. I think understanding it in that bit more detail, I think, helps people. And what I'm hoping is that there are either organizations out there, founders out there, family business owners out there, or in fact, financial consultancies out there that are going to need a bit of support to help their client to ultimately save jobs. And I think they'll benefit from hearing this, and I think they'll learn a lot from it.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to just add, Mark, that not every turnaround includes the whole business. It could well be that the sales team needs turning around. It could be finances need turning around, or operationally it needs turning around. So it's not always the whole pie, as it were. It could be slices, and the rest of it is business improvement. But thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've most enjoyed our session.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too, Mark. Thank you very much, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you.